For today's coaster review, I will be reviewing Wild Thing, this Morgan Hypercoaster located at Valleyfair. It is the tallest in the park, being 207 feet tall, and here is a prime example that says the stats don't mean everything, because even though the coaster has the stats, the ride experience is for sure lacking. Yes, it did open in 1996, but so did the other Morgan Hypercoasters that I have ridden, such as Steel Force, Mamba, and Steel Eel, which, even though this has the best stats, it is my least favorite. But still, it is a fun ride for sure, especially during the end and those airtime hills. They do deliver some great airtime, but before we get started, most importantly, if you're new to the channel, make sure to subscribe for more videos on coasters often. Also, if you want to see more, make sure to follow our social media pages for updates and much more. So I had those expectations, and I just feel like I was a little disappointed because I expected it to be as good as Mamba and Steel Force, but overall, I was just let down a little. But let's get to the stats, as it is of course located at Valleyfair, and it's 207 feet tall. It has a very good top speed at 75 miles per hour, hitting it at the bottom of the first drop, and you can definitely feel the speed throughout the ride, but here's what you can't feel, and that is the inversions. Of course, it does not have any inversions, and then finally has a track length at 5,460 feet, which is very long, so obviously this coaster has a long duration, as I timed it from the top of the lift hill to the brake run, and it is of around 1 minute and 20 seconds, but most of that is due to the coaster going incredibly slow in parts, like the mid-course brake run, and that this coaster has, which, in my opinion, kind of splits up the coaster, which is the second half is the airtime hills. So in terms of rides, I got two, one in the front and the back, which I would definitely prefer the back, especially for those airtime hills at the end. You really can get thrown out of your seat on those airtime moments, referring back to what I said about the first to second halves. Pretty much the first half is a bumpy monorail, very bland, but that second part is the airtime hills that, if you sit in the back, can be very powerful. That's why I do prefer the back over the front, because if you sit in the front, you barely get any airtime, which makes this ride even more boring than it was, although you can have fun on this coaster. It's probably out of the 452 coasters that I have ridden the worst over 200 feet, that the only one that could beat it is either Goliath at Six Flags Magic Mountain or Titan, of course at Six Flags over Texas. But for sure, if you find yourself in this area, go to Valleyfair to ride the coasters there, especially Renegade, but also as it was still fun, even though I have been hating on it. But let's get to the ride experience. First, just looking at this thing, it is massive, especially in that first turn section. The colors also really pop, as this coaster is for sure the main icon of Valleyfair, as the first thing you see driving up to the park, but you'll enter that station where you'll board those trains. These have the standard lap bars that you can of course find on these other Morgan coasters, and personally I do like these because they do give you a ton of room. But the downside is sometimes they will staple you during the ride because they come down very easily, resulting in you occasionally being stapled, and it actually does depend on how far you put it up. You also do have some ride bins, which is always helpful, but you leave that station, take a little dip down, and go up that 207-foot lift hill. You get great views of the surrounding area, including the park to your left and the road to your right, which is actually pretty cool. I mean, you're of course pretty high up there at 207 feet. But then up next is, of course, that drop. I'm not really the biggest fan of Morgan drops, just because the way they are shaped, they don't really give any airtime because on how it goes very gradual into the vertical angle, which is only 60 degrees. Of course, the back is much better, but actually not by much, as you do get some good hang time in the front, but then you'll hit that top speed to 75 miles per hour. It just feel like you're going pretty fast for sure, but then you go into this very big airtime hill, and it does not really deliver any airtime at all, as I was pretty much in my seat the entire hill, which, was disappointing, but then you'll head up into this straight section that is very high off the ground. As you next kind of meander around some very large turns, the transitions are a little janky and very similar to mine trains. I would kind of describe this part as an upscale mine train, just because on how similar the elements are. Just, of course, this is on a way bigger scale, but then you come up into this mid-course brake run that does slow down the coaster quite a bit, which actually does kill a lot of the momentum that you could have had more of. And then is the best part of the ride, where there are 4 airtime hills. One of them is actually being in a tunnel, which is really cool. Like I said earlier, these are way better in the back, just, on how much they get pulled over. This is by far the best part of the ride, and it is not for long though, as you will then hit the brakes, ending your ride on Wild Thing. Of course, this is not the best coaster out there. Probably, a mid-tier for the 452 coasters I've ridden. But don't get me wrong, you can definitely still enjoy on this ride and for what it is. So, for its overall score, it'll get a 7, and not a bad score at all. If it's over a 5, in my opinion, I enjoyed it. So, that'll wrap up my review. What do you think of Wild Thing? Make sure to post that in the comments below. And of course, make sure to subscribe for more videos on Coasters Often. And see ya!